Good evening. How are you all? This week we experienced some warmer weather, right? But then there's forecast of rain on Saturday. Well, either rain or shine, we thank God for His blessing. Tonight, I pray that He'll continue to bless us with His presence and filling us with His love, joy, and peace. We had studied Exodus from chapter 1 to 14. And tonight we're going to start with chapter 15. Here we're going to begin with a song transitioning to Israel's new experience. The song connects their experience in Egypt and their first year trust-building journey in the desert, in essence connecting the past and the future. It marks the end of the traumas in Egypt with a song of praise about the Lord's victory over the chaos. This song is a poetry, and therefore the description is not literal. And most probably, the purpose of using some of those words by the author is to stir the readers, us, emotion and imagination. For example, the mention of God hurling the horse and the rider into the sea does not refer directly to any actual throwing by God, but rather the horse and the riders were knocked down by the Red Sea water when it returns back together after God's people had safely crossed to the other side. Like I mentioned, the song is not a narrative that tells the story from beginning to the end, but a poem. Therefore, it is in a poetic format. Scholars observe that it is divided into 3 stanzas. Verse 1 is the introduction. Verses 2 to 6 is the first stanza. Verses 7 to 11 is the second stanza. Verses 12 to 17 is the third stanza. And verse 18 is the conclusion. And there are refrains or chorus at the beginning and also in between. Now let's read chapter 15, verse 1. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for He is highly exalted. Both horse and driver He has hurled into the sea. It is noticed that the song that I just read and continue until verse 18, it's not a celebration and it's not a description of the defeat of the Egyptians, but it is a song of praise. It is not to praise the accomplishment of the people, the Israelites, or the great leadership skill of Moses, but rather it is a song to praise about the great triumph of their God. Now let's read verses 2 to 6. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise Him, my Father's God, and I will exalt Him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is His name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army He has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned into the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank into depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. The first stanza of the song is about the Israelites' deliverance at the sea. Verses 2 and 3 describe their experience of God's power in saving them. And they are singing about the God that their fathers know, and He is the warrior who is fighting for them. And verse 5 said, the water had covered the enemies, and they sank to the deep like a stone. And you'll notice that this phrase about enemies sinking or stone repeats in all 3 of the stanzas, like a refrain in our hymns. While its last line summarizes its theme, verse 6, it said, your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. It tells us that the people recognize God's almighty power. and they praise him for it. Now verses 7 to 11, the second stanzas. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who oppose you. You unleashed your burning anger. It consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the water piled up. The surging waters stood up like a wall. The deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake them, I will divide the spoil, I will gorge myself on them, I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you? Majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders. The second stanzas that I just read describes the people witness the attack of the enemy and the power of the Lord in defending them. Verses 9 and 10 tells how the enemy boasted. There were so many eyes here. I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. I will gorge myself on them. I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But they didn't know God's great power. He blew a breath, and the sea covers them. And they sank. Remember, sank again? They sank like lead to the bottom of the sea. This is the second stanzas have this sinking, right? Remember, the first stanza said they sank like stone. Now it says they sank like lead. And in verse 13, the people couldn't say anything else but cried out, Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Only the Lord, Israel's God, can bring about miraculous wonders like these. No other gods, not from the Egyptian God, not from the other gods, people worship can perform such acts. Now verses 12 to 17, this is the third stanza. You stretch out your right hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them. By the power of your arm, they will be as still as a stone. Until your people pass by, Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. This third stanza is transitioning from the people's witness to God's power from the past to the future. They witness their enemy's demise, and they are looking forward to their future hope, which is God's leadership of love, power, and strength, bringing them to the inheritance, the promised land. Verse 13, the word redeem in Hebrew is quana, meaning acquired by some effort. It can mean that this act of redemption of the people requires strenuous effort in God's part. It was no small act of God to free his people from Pharaoh and his army. Here in verses 14 to 16, first part, describes the terror and dread of the people and the leaders in Canaan, the people who live by the sea, the Moabites, the Edomite, and the other Canaanites. And these people, when they hear about the Israelites, they were afraid. And they were frightened because they heard about the Israelites, Red Sea crossing, how the God has saved them from the Egyptians. And now verse 16, the second part, again, is a refrain. By the power of your arm, they, the enemies, will be as still as a stone. until your people pass by, Lord. The previous stanzas describe the enemy sinking like a stone, sinking like lead. Now they cannot move. They will be still as a stone. Until when? Until God's people pass by. And verse 17, the last part of the song, is the worship and praise for God because of what he has done for them in the past, and again, what he will do in the future. It says God will make his dwelling in their midst at Mount Sinai and Mount Zion, the soon-to-be established sanctuary. What a blessing. Now verse 18. The Lord reigns forever and ever. This is the conclusion of the Song of Moses, praising God for his spectacular victory over the Pharaoh and his army. The focus is on God and not on any human accomplishments. The people recognize that God was there in the past, in the present, and will continue to lead them in the future. They know that he is the eternal God. Now verses 19 to 21. When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timber in her hand, and all the women followed her with timber and dancing. Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he is hurled into the sea." Verse 19 brought us back to the previous chapter, the end of chapter 4, verses 28 and 29, about the destruction of the Egyptian chariots and horsemen. After witnessing God's glorious victory, Miriam, Aaron's sister, led the people into song of praise. The bringing us back to the previous chapter, scholars think that Miriam's song was probably sung before Moses' song, and it was probably sung like a chorus leading into Moses' song. And verse 20 said Miriam was a prophetess. She was the first prophetess mentioned in the Bible. And there are other prophetess in the Old Testament. For example, Deborah in Judges chapter 4, verse 4, Huldah in 2 Kings chapter 22, verse 14, and Noadiah, Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 4. So what was the content in Miriam's song? Well, it was all about praising God for what he has done for them. She sang, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea." Now let's move on to the next section. Water of Marah and Elim. And then verse 22, then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became fit to drink. There the Lord issued a ruling and instruction for them and put them to the test. The word Marah means bitterness. And where is this Marah? The scholars think this is inland and 50 miles south of the northern end of Suez. Apparently, Israel went down the west coast of Sinai until they turned east towards Sinai. After 9 days of traveling here, the water skin was depleted of water, and they couldn't find water for 3 days. So there was a threat of dehydration and death. And when finally they found water, it was undrinkable because it was bitter. Well, I just want to mention that this is the beginning of the people's 5 crises in this next chapters, 15, 16, and 17. And right now I just read the first crisis, which is about thirst, no water. And then the second crisis, next chapter, would be about hunger. They were hungry for bread and meat. And then chapter 17, the people would be thirsty again and they couldn't find water. And then afterward, the fourth crisis is that they had to face their enemy now, not the Egyptian. This time it's the Amalekites. And then the fifth crisis would be in chapter 18. It was Moses being overworked. See, in all these events, the people complained against Moses. But in actuality, they were complaining against God. Why? Because God was actually behind leading the people. Moses was just following orders. Verse 25 said, Moses cried out to God, and God showed Moses a tree. And when Moses threw the tree into the water became drinkable. The passage says, the Lord tested them. And in Hebrew meaning, God tended to train his people. God was trying to train his people so that they would learn to trust him and follow his instruction and not to be anxious all the time. It was for their own well-being. Now verse 26. He said, if you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. The Lord continued telling his people that if they have the kind of relationship with him, pay attention to his commands and obey them, they will not have the kind of diseases the Egyptians have. In Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 15, mentioned that Egypt was known to be a land of disease. Well, this was God's promise to them. And here God identified himself as, I am the Lord who heals you. Indicates God has the power to heal if the people would follow his instruction. Now verse 27. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water. Elim means large trees. It is much more satisfying oasis than Marah, right? And sharply contrasts with the bitter experience there. 12 springs and 70 palm trees. Elim shows God's ability to provide for the Israelites had they been patient and trusting rather than complaining. In summary, there are 5 points I'd like to point out. Number 1, the song of Moses and Miriam teaches the importance of acknowledging and thanking God for his blessings and intervention in our lives. It is not our own doing. It is God's doing. Second point, the Israelites witnessed firsthand God's miraculous power in parting the Red Sea and defeating the enemies. This teaches us to trust God's power to overcome obstacles and challenges in our own lives. And the narrative also reveals the weakened human nature Humans have short-term memory and tends to forget what God has done for them when facing immediate challenges or discomforts. We can see that in this narrative, chapter 14 and 15, that despite their witnessing the miraculous parting of the Red Sea, the Hebrews quickly reverted to complaining when they encountered bitter water at Marah. Number 4, despite experiencing God's power, humans are susceptible to fear, frustration, and complaining. This reminds us that there's an ongoing struggle between faith and doubt, and the need for continual reliance on God's guidance and God's strength, especially when facing challenges. The 5th point, the final point, God is faithful. At the end of the day, He always comes through. After Marah, the Israelites were led to an oasis in Elim. In Elim, they enjoy the water from 12 springs and the shade from 70 palm trees. And there'll be other tests and there'll be other training in the next chapters. Happy Sabbath.